Welcome to this edition of Morgan You Asked For podcast. Wednesday afternoon. Trev's joining us today. Glad to see we got video back. I know you've been battling that for a while now, but getting a little bit closer to getting that every time. Thank you for tuning in. I know we took a week off. It just didn't work with Trevor's schedule and then being on vacation in a foreign country. I probably could have tried to do it, but there wasn't really good spots, and the internet was a little bit hit or miss. I just didn't want to force things, and Trevor and I talked a little bit and just decided to take a week off. And like we talked about, we don't have sponsors or anything else to answer to, so we kind of can do our thing. But we do like doing it once a week or so. And if anybody does want to sponsor us and make sure we do it once a week, we're open to that, though.
Not going to turn down any money, that's for sure.
No, but just kind of talk about the trip or whatever real quick. Just getting away, going to a foreign country that I'd never been to. I've been to other islands in the Caribbean, so it was similar, but every island has their differences. And this was a little bit bigger island than some, but obviously smaller than others. We were kind of off in one corner of the island, and most of the other stuff that you went to was a 30-minute cab ride back to the city or up to where we were going. It's only like 10 miles, but you really don't ever drive more than like 40 mile an hour. That's the crazy part, is there's no highways. They drive on the wrong side of the road because they're a British colony or whatever. They're independent now, but they were a British colony forever. And so, yeah, they're sitting on the wrong side of the car. They're on the wrong side of the road. The roads are awful, like potholes, just like you can't go fast because of the roads. And then it's just like an old county road all over the place. There's, barely 2 lanes wide. There's no shoulders. So when someone pulls off to the side, essentially it turns it into a one-way road. It's and then there's big semis and trucks and big vans that are essentially the cabs and everything. It's crazy. And Laura, this was her first time out of the country, so she had never seen that. Like, obviously, I'd seen that before in other countries and stuff, but it's different. Just the way people live are different, and it's always good. And one of the best parts about the trip, and I know even this doesn't even have to be on a foreign, but just the people you meet. We hung out we were at a resort. It wasn't very busy. We're off season because it technically is hurricane season. Usually it's more later in the summer and fall when they happen, but technically it is hurricane season there. So it's not, and it was warm. It was 85 degrees, but it was better than it was back here where it was 105 degrees or whatever it was. And so it was warm every day. So the resort wasn't crowded, which was really nice. And so you see the same people doing the same things. You sign up to do the same excursions. And there's, kind of two different couples here. There's, Ben and Ava. Ben is from Cedar Rapids, went to Xavier, played football at South Dakota. Eva's from Omaha, and obviously she went to South Dakota as well. They just got married. They got married the same day Laura and I did, but they were much younger. They're 26 and 23 or 24. So they're just starting their life. They live in Savannah, Georgia now, with work and everything, and she's starting to teach down there. And then we met Alex and Holly. They're from Raleigh, North Carolina, which is really neat because that's a part of the country that everybody's moving to. And he's a North Carolina State guy, so he's kind of on the same lines as Iowa State, where they're not North Carolina and they hate North Carolina and they don't like Duke, and it's just kind of funny to have that conversation. And then we met a couple, which I don't remember their names, I'll be honest, that were from London. A lot of foreigners there, a lot of Canadians from London. They were great. They were older. They were there for 2 weeks, which I think that would be a little bit old, but they think we're crazy for only coming for a week. They're like, that's not enough time. By this time you spend an entire day coming here and an entire day going back, you're not here long enough. And I'm like, well, it just is what it is. And but they go every year to Dubai as well. They spend 2 weeks in Dubai and 2 weeks in on an island. That's what they do every. And it's weird. You think, well, they're richer ever. She's a nurse and he works in a factory. It's just differences in what they decide to do and what they want to do. Uh, with being in Antigua, Shirley Heights, it's steel drums and the carnival and everything. The culture is what makes all the islands. And I know some people, they just stay on the resort and get their drinks and do their stuff, but getting out and seeing everything, that's what it's all about, and that's what I always like to do. And Laura really enjoyed that as well. We swam with stingrays. I know a lot of places you can swim with dolphins. This was a place out in the middle of the ocean. I mean, it's Pavlov's dog. I mean, they feed these things so they come. I mean, it's, they hear the boats and they know that they're going to get fed. But it was kind of a little bit nerve wracking because we all hear Steve Irwin got killed by a stingray or whatever. But they said that the only way that happens is literally like he had to step on it, and that's when it get. But just when they're swimming around and everything, they're absolutely harmless and stuff. So that was fun. Flights were good. We drove to St. Louis just because of flight times and everything. Long day. We went down. We left at 5 a.m. So we got there like at 3 o'clock, 2:30, whatever it was, and got there in the afternoon. And I just spent the night there. And then on the way back, we left at 2 o'clock. So you got there about noon or maybe a little after, and um, got
Nobody
home
died.
about.
Nobody died on your flight, right? Like the
Nope.
Indianapolis
So,
one.
nope. That was and we actually had funny talks like that. And then the other thing, just when you talk about people, I know we're old because when we talk to people about other things, it was, your mortgage rate, how long you've been in your house. This one guy that we called Memphis, they were from Memphis. They live in Wichita now. Uh, we didn't actually learn his name. She was Brooke, and the girls knew her name, but we never actually asked that. But I know that living in Mississippi, because that's they're from Memphis, but they were on the Mississippi side, is cheaper, and then Wichita, and they had to move, and their house rate, and it's just like mine, went from 3% interest to 6% because they just had to move, and I'm like, yeah, we're all idiots. Then the one guy, he lived from Raleigh, and he's lived in his house for a while, and his house has went from $300,000 worth to about $1 million worth just because of what's happening in Raleigh and Charlotte, North Carolina, just in general, where it's booming. We're old, and that's what we talk about. And retire in 10 years or 15 years, and what are you going to do? It, it's crazy. When you're 25, you don't talk about that stuff, but when you're 45 to 50, that's what you talk about.
So how was the food at the resort? Did you get sick of it, or was it pretty good?
No, I liked. I mean, it was resort food. A lot of fish, chicken. That's our two things. We went. One night was a steakhouse, and I had a prime rib, and it was good, but it's not Iowa prime rib. Another night I had lobster, and then they had Italian stuff. But I always try to lean towards fish there, at places like that. One, I do that at a steakhouse anyway. I can grill a steak at home. I'm not going to cook fish at home very often. I should, but I don't. Um, but yeah, no, it was good. They had a regular buffet for every meal, and then they had a little grill after a snack grill that made pizzas at night. That was good. You could get just a cheeseburger anytime. It wasn't super busy, and then obviously the drinks. They had a drink of the day and all the drinks you could have and want, and you kind of get sometimes I'm not a huge beer guy, and so I didn't drink beer for a long time. But towards the end of the week, everything was so sugary and everything. I'm like, can I just have beer? It's like I'm kind of wasting it. But they have local beer there. That was pretty. I mean, I thought it was pretty good. It wasn't more like a Budweiser than like a Bud Light or Busch Light or anything. But and then they had stouts and stuff, which I'm not a stout guy, and especially in 85-degree weather. Um, Weather was great. Only real issue, we had really half a day of rain. Other than that, it was good. It is warm and it's humid. So, obviously going in going in February or in the wintertime, it's a little bit cooler there, and then obviously it feels much better. But it sounded like, and obviously being by the ocean, you always have a breeze and stuff. So it was better than being here. It was really hot here, I guess.
Been hot all over. I'm in Vegas, and it's been 112 to 115 every
Oh,
day. This is day number 6. I'm in Vegas,
oh,
and guess how much money
still,
I've gambled?
still, still alive. I'm going to say zero, since you're still
$20. I've only gambled
$20.
$20 in 6 days.
That's including sports betting.
No sports betting, just $20. I haven't done any sports betting. I sat down at video poker last night with a coworker. We were watching dueling pianos, and I threw 20 in. That's it.
Now, how much? I mean, drinking wise, and just going out and doing things is still super expensive and stuff there, though, right?
It is. I mean, I'm here for work, so like you
Yeah,
grab a cheeseburger for lunch, it gets paid for,
yeah,
which is really nice. But yeah, this is. I've been to Vegas so many times; it's super
yeah.
expensive here, and I just decided this time I'm gonna not really spend any money or do much. We got a conference going on.
Okay.
Tonight's the last night. We're doing Top Golf, but yeah, it's been hot. I mean, 112 to 115. I don't care that it's dry heat. Once it gets above like 105, it's just you don't want to be outside.
No, and I've heard that some people really like going this time of year there just because it is so hot. You're not going to do anything outside unless you want to do the you know the Hoover Dam. But if you're truly just in for the shows and the gambling and then the food and drink, you're not going outside hardly at all anyway. So it's a little cheaper out there right now and everything with it being so hot. It's off season for them, kind of. It's never really an off season out there, but kind of is. And I've heard so heck don't need to leave anyway.
Yeah, you want to stay inside. At least I do. So I'm at the Park MGM, but it's a quick walk across the street to New York, New York.
Yeah.
I stayed at the Excalibur the first couple nights. I wish I would have actually stayed there the entire time because they've redone the rooms, which are really nice. Excalibur's old,
Yeah,
and
I stayed in Excalibur 25 years ago when I turned 21.
the air conditions work really good at the Excalibur. The Park MGM, my AC says 65. I bet it's like 73 in here. It's right at that borderline where as long as I'm sitting still and not moving around, I'm okay. But once you get moving around, it's a little warm.
That's what the one thing the first night we got there, I don't think our air conditioning it ended up the air conditioning was not working, but we were so tired with waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning and everything, it didn't even matter. And we had some drinks on the plane and when we got there and everything, it truly didn't matter. We were tired. It was a little warm. I'm like, well, maybe you go to a lot of foreign places, air conditioning is really not a thing anyway. And I'm like, well, maybe it's just not, it's just is what it is. It takes some time to cool it down because it was hot out. And we woke up in the morning and it wasn't good. And we left and our room was, way up on top of the bluff compared to the actual resort. So, kind of when we went down, we didn't really go back. And the next night we got back and it was about 11 o'clock, maybe 11:30. And I'm sitting there and I'm just like, I can't do it. I am a spoiled American. And I go, there's something that has to be wrong here. So they sent a guy and like, yeah, it's not, whatever it is, it's not working. So we did move rooms and we walked into this room and I'm like, oh, this is better. And then obviously it was fine the rest of the week. But, for a while I was like, I'll put up with it the first night because I was so tired. The second night I wasn't so tired. And I'm like, yep, I'm out. It was, so we got
That's
a
why
new
you see all
room.
the foreigners that came here for the World Cup. They're loving the air condition when they were
Yeah,
here.
yeah, they're gonna go home and be like, "What the heck?" And I know Europe is very much non-air conditioning, and it is getting warmer, like global warming or whatever you want to talk
Mm.
about. It is warmer in Europe than it used to be, and they're feeling it.
You can't beat air condition. One of the
No,
greatest inventions of all time.
well then what's weird is you grew up and I grew up where the first house we lived didn't have central air. You had window air conditioning, and when it was those few days it was super hot, you just slept in that room, and or you just dealt with it. My grandparents never did have central air in their house. It was always a window air conditioning. Same thing. Our new house, those windows in the living room and everything. I mean, you've been there. They don't open, so it's not even an option to open the windows and let air through. So like you have to have air. It's just yeah, it's just kind of crazy. It's how different life is today than it was even 30 years ago.
I know my grandparents when they were younger, they slept outside in the yard.
Yep.
on some nights because it was so hot out.
Yeah,
You know,
just
so
because of air and just every. I mean, yeah, you get cooped up and yeah.
thank God for air conditioning.
Yeah, we do appreciate it. All right, anything else? What's that? You kind of talked about you're in Vegas and been there for a week almost and stuff. So, um, any other trips for you before kind of football or life? I think of it as school time. Obviously as a teacher and stuff, but just once the middle of August hits, it's over. Anywhere else you're going on vacation soon or anything, or just work travel?
Nope, just work travel. I'll be home, the first week of September, of course, getting ready for fantasy drafts, survivor pools, getting ready for football season, and that's our bread and butter, and it's not far away now. I think we
No,
got
it's getting close to
24
that point.
days until college football, and then we got the Hall of Fame game tomorrow night. The Cardinals and Panthers. Carson Beck is going to start that, so I'll watch the first couple series to see how he does. I mean, I'll probably have it on the entire time, but I'm not going to really be dialed in to the
Right.
Hall of Fame game in the third and fourth quarters by any means.
Yeah, just kind of talking football here. We'll kind of go reverse order what we kind of talked about before we went on, but yeah, college football. I know Iowa State started today, so most teams are probably starting today because they play that Saturday, the 5th, I believe is the first game, and then some schools have already went because they do. I know TCU and North Carolina are playing in Ireland like Iowa State did last year, so they've been going for a week. Um, and I know they were talking. Iowa State was really glad they didn't start last week because it was so hot last week here in Iowa. And all I know is today it is raining and it is thundering and it is lightning. Um, Kind of the plan, before we set this down, I was maybe going to go play golf at 3 o'clock with the boys today, but there's no golf happening around here today.
Yeah, stay safe. The Midwest has been hot. Like you said, it's probably a good week this week to get camp started. The NFL's got that going on too. As you mentioned, North Carolina, TCU, and Dublin. There are some other early games too in the college football season. That following Thursday, Colorado's at Georgia Tech. I could see Colorado getting run out of the building in that one. I think that's going to be a tough game for them. Friday, Miami at Stanford, Fresno State at USC. Those should maybe be okay.
Would Miami Stanford be a conference game, or was this one of those like scheduled before they were conference?
Good question. I don't know that. I'm not sure.
Like TCU and Colorado, a couple of those games they played were not conference games, or Arizona, Kansas State, because they had already scheduled them before they switched conferences and everything. But yeah, because obviously Miami to Stanford's a long, long ways away from each other, but it might be a conference game that is decided to put early, because I know Florida State and Clemson have played early, things like that. So obviously Iowa State, Kansas State last year was a conference game early, but yeah, let's just kind of talk college football here real quick. Coaches poll came out yesterday. The Hawks are number 22 in the top 25. I believe 8 Big Ten teams were in it, also 8 SEC teams. And then I kind of just went, let's just say the 2014 playoff went by the poll in 24 teams. It was 8 Big Ten, 8 SEC, 4 Big 12, 3 ACC, and then Notre Dame. So 1 independent. And that's, they're going to want guarantees, but I don't know how much you need guarantees. That's about what it's going to be, whether you guarantee or not. And then on a certain year, it might be 10 SEC teams and only 6 Big Ten, or maybe 1 extra Big 12 or an extra ACC. But in round numbers on a 10-year, look at it, I would say that's what it's going to be. Half to a little bit more than half Big Ten and SEC, and then the second half is made up of everybody else.
Yeah, I think you're correct on that. I mean, most years it'll be probably 6 to 8 Big Ten, 6 to 8 SEC, 3 to 4 Big 12, 3 to 4 at ACC, depending on who's good that year. As you mentioned, Notre Dame, a lot of years they're going to get in because they're Notre Dame, and they're probably going to win at least 9 to 10 games every year, given their schedule.
90% of the years, I would be shocked if they're not.
Yeah, so I mean that's probably how it's going to play out. Like you said, the guarantees. A lot of years you probably don't even need them, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and then just camp starts. Hawks, their question is at quarterback. Iowa State's question is just everything. I mean, I think they've got some decent players, but whether they can step up to the Big 12 level because they're from, Washington State or Toledo or South Dakota State, or just I know one of the linebackers was a first team All American D2 guy. That's just what it's going to be. They might end up being really really good, or if things go haywire, they might be not very good at all. So Iowa State's just a big question. Iowa, the question Iowa has is they had so many seniors last year. I think they're the least. They have the least amount of returning starting snaps in the country, even more than Iowa State, which is a little bit crazy because I don't know any starters that are back for Iowa State, but that's just what it is. And then obviously, hate watch. I don't even know how to say it, but Iowa State. How focused are we going to be on Penn State and those guys? Do you want them to do well? Do you not want them to do well? And I'm torn. I mean, they're good people, but they all left, and some of them wasn't by choice. I mean, I truly think some of them that are not at Penn State might not have been a choice. I think I've said this on here, but like an Abu Sama that went to Wisconsin, and I don't know the numbers, but let's just say he got paid $300,000 last year from Campbell's program, and with him being a senior this year, Jimmy Rogers might only offered him 150. So he's like, well, and then Wisconsin is paying him 300. I'm like, well, did he get kicked out of the program? No. Did he get, did he make the best decision for him? Because is he an NFL guy? Probably not. So $150,000 in 1 year to do the same thing, I don't necessarily blame him. And there might be 10 other guys that did that same thing where they weren't kicked out of the program, but they weren't necessarily valued as much as they would have been if they'd have stayed with Campbell, because they don't have as many years left. Now, the new rule of 5 and 5, Sama actually would have 2 years left because he played right away as a freshman. So that changed a little bit with the rules, but when this was decided in December, the rules were not that way. So he had 1 year left, and they kind of wanted to go younger.
Yeah, you can't blame any of the players for that. As you mentioned, Iowa State's going to be a mystery team this year. I mean, the state of Iowa, between Iowa and Iowa State, for quite a while, we knew we were getting out of both teams most years. Iowa, good defense, O-line, special teams. Question's always the quarterback. Iowa State, it was a lot of early season struggles, and then they'd hit their stride under Campbell. So Iowa State's, a mystery team. They could surprise people and be really good, or they could be terrible, somewhere in between. We just have no idea how the new coaching staff and these players are going to adjust to the Big 12 and the new school that they're at.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where, Iowa State, that second week against Iowa could go really bad, could go poorly, but really it doesn't matter that much. You have to look at how they're doing midway through October through November. Have they gotten better? Are they, just doing things the right way to look to the future? And then if things go right at the early, maybe they only lose one of their first 6 games, doesn't even matter who it is, then you're like, holy smokes, we're better than we think, and then go try to get to the Big 12 championship game. You have no idea. And just looking at their schedule, Iowa's always going to be tough on the road, but they've proven they can win there. Obviously, this is a new staff and everything. Utah's at home. They should be pretty good, but then a few of the other, harder games that are at home as well, and, 9 or 10 wins, and holy smokes, this is the best coach ever. And I really don't see that happening because of the ball bouncing and just everything's new. I'm going to go 4 to 7 wins. It's going to be my prediction. When we get a little bit closer, I was kind of writing down some things when I was working here at school. Just things over the next couple of weeks. We need to win, loss, Iowa State. Usually we pick, Nebraska because it's always whatever we do, and probably we'll do Penn State this year as well.
Yeah, we should do Penn State. I know we'll do our, like, the week of the season, we always do our official predictions. We'll do our college football playoff, the 12 teams that we think we're going to make it. That could be really good or really bad, depending on what teams live up to their expectations or don't. What was I going to add? Oh, so your college football pick'em pool that you did last year, I assume you're going to do that again. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, we're gonna do those same pools, and I know you talked about um, a college survivor. I'm with you on the question where is it too easy, or do you just can you select where it's just the Power Four schools? That might be a little bit more difficult as you get in. Um, but yeah, there's some just because there's so many more teams than like an NFL Survivor that we've all been in with multiple people in multiple years. But um, just like obviously fantasy, uh, college football is interesting because you know every week there's somebody that would go off. I mean, every week. It's just you got to find that guy, and he might be playing for Jacksonville State. I mean, you got to find that guy, and I don't know if he just limited to the Power Four, or maybe it almost would be a little bit more fun if you went no Power Four and you had to do like the group of five teams.
Right. That would definitely be tougher. Yeah, I was just thinking because you week 9 or 10, you could save Alabama for when they play Citadel or
Right. They
one of
don't
those
do
teams.
that I think this
Well,
year they're
they
not
might
doing
not
it.
this year. So that's why I was saying maybe you have to pick like three games every week, and you have to win 2 out of 3 to survive. But I don't know. That might be a little too complicated. I've never done a college one before, so I was kind of looking into it when I was
Yeah.
sitting around the other day. But I'll have to do some more research on that.
Yeah, that's what I might do some too. But yeah, anything you can play is fun. I mean, I love doing that
Mhm.
kind of stuff. I'm not a true fantasy person anymore. That time has passed. But where you're picking teams and just throw $50 in and whoever wins wins. I kind of like those. Yeah, and that college pick'em was fun. Yeah, and then I think we did one in the playoffs and maybe the NFL playoffs and all that kind of stuff. So yeah,
Yeah, that'll definitely be fun. I know I just wrote down a few teams. Obviously betting wise, I always like to talk about the odds because we've got some people that listen that like betting too. You're gonna have to pick one or two of the big favorites, of course.
yep, yep,
But just some teams in that 22 to 27-1 range. I like Ole Miss
yep.
22-1, Oklahoma 22-1, and Texas A&M 27-1. I'm probably going to bet on all three of those. A&M, they played. It was a close game versus Miami in that first round of the playoffs. Now they were at home. They returned their quarterback. Oklahoma should have one of the best defenses in all of college football, and Mateer should be healthy. So I'm kind of a believer in Oklahoma. And then Ole Miss with Pete Golding. I like everything I've read about Pete Golding. I think he's going to have Ole Miss on the right track. I don't think they're going to miss a beat necessarily without Lane Kiffin.
No, they returned the quarterback, which is
Mm-hmm.
huge, and then he's got like a chip on his shoulder, and he's gonna put a chip on all those guys that your coach left you and didn't want you guys, and didn't the guys that are still there that stayed obviously didn't take with him, and obviously he was a D coordinator on staff, um, and it almost thinks like maybe Golding and Lane Kiffin weren't seeing eye to eye anyway. They worked together obviously, but maybe they weren't best of friends, and they just were kind of in there for convenience, and both were doing their job kind of almost independently.
Yeah,
More like an NFL setting where
mhm.
the coordinators really have nothing to do with each other.
Yeah. I'm a big believer in Pete Golding. I think he's the right guy. And then I'll have a few long shots in there. Washington 100-1. I think they've got a pretty good team. I will probably throw a bet on Clemson at 175-1. Dabo's last, this is his final stand maybe. And Vanderbilt at 250-1. I like what Clark Lee's done at Vanderbilt. We'll see if they can fix the quarterback position now that Diego Pavia left.
Do they
That'll be the big
sign
question.
someone that we know at all, or is it a guy they just have brought up?
I don't know. I'd have to go and look. I just saw them at 250-1. I'm like, they were a pretty decent team last year. There was a long shot. What I should do is I should just bet them to make the playoff, not actually win the national title.
Right. Yeah, those are good ones. All right. Anything else for college football? Obviously, we're getting closer, so we're going to talk more and more football as we go forward.
No, I think that's a lot. Enough for college. I mean, they've got those early games, and then the first real Saturday, Baylor versus Auburn in Atlanta,
Yep.
Clemson, LSU, Louisville and Ole Miss are playing in Nashville, and then Wisconsin and Notre Dame are playing at Lambeau Field. So those will be some of the marquee games that first true weekend of college football.
Yep. All right. Let's move on to the NFL. Kind of my notes that I have are just getting started. And like you said, the Hall of Fame game is coming up real quick. In fact, I think it's tomorrow, right?
Tomorrow night, correct.
Um, but there always are, and this is the worst part about football, is the injuries. The Bears already have a big injury, um, and there's just you hear. I think Atlanta had a defensive end tear their ACL, and just that's the worst part of football is the injuries, and so early in camp, it's just you never know.
The Panthers have really been struck, probably the worst of any team right now so far with injuries. They lost an offensive lineman in the playoff game last year. Taylor Moore's got blood clots, their other offensive tackle. That's that's not even just a football injury. That's you got to take care of yourself in your life with something like that. And Nick Scorton, Chris Brazzell, the receiver they took in the third round out of Tennessee, who I really liked, he's out for the year. So the Panthers have probably been hit the hardest of any team that I've seen so far with injuries. And that was one of those teams I was looking at maybe as a sleeper team. I know they made the playoffs last year, but the Panthers don't really get national attention compared to some other teams. But with these injuries, I'm probably going to steer clear of Carolina this year.
Yeah, that's tough, and unfortunately, I mean, this is the realist. There's going to be more, and hopefully, it's just not one of the big time names and teams, and derail the entire season. And some of college football, high school football, it is just a little bit of injury luck. Do you get a guy gets hurt today, but he comes back November 15th, from a pretty good injury, but it's early enough. It's almost one of those, if it's an injury that you can come back from this year, it's like, do it right now. Do it. And then you'll get you back and have you for the playoffs and everything with a lot less wear and tear through the year. Instead of playing, when if let's just say you get to the Super Bowl and it's 22 games or 23 or 21 games, whatever it might be, now you're only playing, 11 games or whatever, half the games. It actually helps.
Yeah, injury luck, depending when, where, how long it comes, when your bye week is. If you have a quarterback that gets injured, maybe not long term, but is going to miss a couple weeks and it happens right before your bye, sometimes that can be a blessing in disguise. The 49ers, of course, have got a bunch of Ricky Pearsall's out for the year. I saw something on Instagram earlier this morning of the substation that's right by their field. Somebody created a substation account, and they're like, everybody's mad at me, and I'm just trying to do my job. And then they showed a picture. The 49ers posted something about George Kittle. Do you think he'll be ready to go start the season? And the substation said, we'll see.
Yep. That's good.
That was good. This is the time of year you just don't want to see any of the big players get injured. There's been a bunch of contracts that have been handed out. Bijan Robinson, Zay Flowers, Chris Olave, Darnell Wright with your Bears.
Yep. I said Bears signed that big guy. Yep.
Pretty typical. Stephon Diggs just signed with Washington before we got on the call here, and there's some other little news here and there. But yeah, typically, me and a lot of other football fans, for the NFL at least, we just pray that the quarterbacks don't go down, because we all know when you're watching a regular season NFL game, if the backup's in and it's not a good backup, it makes it a lot tougher to watch.
Absolutely. All right, let's go to the WNBA. Really, the story there is the Fever are playing much better now. They got beat the other night by Minnesota, who's the best team in the league. So it's nothing. They had won like 10 in a row, and the Fever had won like 5 or 6 in a row. So they're playing much better. And we talked about that a couple weeks ago, how once Stephanie White kind of went off on the officials and everything, they played better. Now, it's kind of went away from Caitlin Clark a little bit. Now she's getting caught in the crossfires a little bit, but now the NBA is WNBA is focusing on Sophie Cunningham and her comments and what the coaches are wearing and what they're saying and doing, and boys are going to play or allowed. It's unfortunate that the political side of it is getting in this, let alone the real life, just social issue that it is.
Well, it's one of the goofiest, most insecure, and poorly run leagues in the history of sports. So there's no surprise at all this is going on. There's got to be dart leagues and bowling leagues out there in small little towns like Oski that are run better than the Mickey Mouse Association, like I like to call it. They've got no leadership. They're all over the place on everything. They want attention, but then they don't want attention. you're right. Sophie Cunningham's comments, she's being praised or attacked depending on the sides of folks. Now I saw something like they're going to try to get a transgender person to go play in the WNBA, all these different things. And it's just, I think Sophie said a little bit earlier this morning or yesterday, she's like, we should probably just get back to focusing mostly on basketball, which would probably be good. But, she said what she said. So, I mean, it's going to be a story the remainder of the season. There's going to be crowds outside the stadiums and signs and all this other stuff. But it's a mess of a league. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, they're unfortunately, and Caitlin Clark, some people are vilifying her because she doesn't say anything, and this is why she doesn't say anything. Because you can't win. It doesn't matter what side you're on, doesn't matter what you say. They're going to take the 2-second clip and go about, take their side of it and say you're, whatever it is. And that's why, Michael Jordan was kind of, that way, where you just don't say anything and let people say, everything's not good because you're not saying anything. And even LeBron, for the most part, hasn't said a lot. Now, a little bit with the China thing and over the course of the thing. And he's been it's pretty obvious where his allegiances may lie with some of his actions. But he hasn't said a whole lot just because you can't win. It doesn't matter what you say.
Yeah, it's a no-win situation. Like you mentioned, Jordan mostly stayed out of it. Caitlin Clark, if I'm her, the players in the league have basically been against her the entire time, and then now they want her to speak out. Yeah. When they want money or they want something to go their way, they don't mind requesting that she step in and help. But other times they don't like that. So if I was her, I'd just say screw them. Yeah. The rest of my career, I'd be a little bit more petty than she is. And then the Angel Reese, Paige Beckers betting. It wasn't before an actual game, and they laughed it off. And I guarantee you, Adam Silver and the NBA probably didn't find that very funny. And I'm guessing there were some talks behind closed doors. And I assume all the teams talk to their players like, you can't do this. Look at the Brendan Sorsby situation. It's not apples to apples, but his life is all over the place. He's going to play, not play. Judge gets involved, enter the supplemental draft. No, you can't. Now he's back. Has to wait a year. There's enough stories out there that was just dumb. And then whoever on the WNBA social account that reposted the video, I'd want to know who that is. Like, what in the world are you thinking doing that?
Yeah, we've talked about for years, they just can't get out of their own way. Like you said, they reposted it. It's like, let alone it happened, they reposted it.
Just no self-awareness. So I'm sure Adam Silver did not find that very funny. I know they didn't punish him, which again, like we talked about Brendan Sorsby, it's not like he killed anyone or robbed a bank. Same thing there. But they've got to be careful because we've seen NFL players get suspended for sports betting. The Brendan Sorsby situation. The NBA had with that underground poker game going on about a year ago or whatever, that big scandal that came out. I'd have to go reread that to freshen up on it. But there's enough with gambling, sports, betting that you just don't want that, especially on video.
Yeah, on video is real bad. All right, and then kind of the last thing here, the baseball trade deadline. Now, we can make the arguments that who did well, who didn't do well, and you can go read ESPN or CBS, and they'll grade every team. But the only one we're going to talk about, and it's really not about the trade and what happens. It's, Skubal the best pitcher goes to the Dodgers. Now, in the big scheme of things, this doesn't change anything for this year because they're going to take on a salary, and it doesn't. Any team could have done that. Any team could have traded him for what it is, but it's the long-term play, and it's the conspiracy theory that the Major League Baseball owners wanted him to go to the Dodgers. It was a little bit. I think it was kind of known that probably in the off season he was going to sign with the Dodgers anyway. So you were only getting a couple month rental anyway. So why give them any? Give Detroit anything. And then the other thing is, and I understand why Detroit did it, but Detroit is right in the mix. 11 of the 15 teams in the American League are within a few games of getting to the playoffs. The Twins were supposed to be awful. They are one game out of the playoffs right now, and they tried to help their team a little bit. They didn't get hugely involved, but they tried to help their team. And but the big play is this a conspiracy to let that trade go through to get a work stoppage for next year? The collective bargaining agreement ends, I think, December 1st or right after the World Series, whatever that might be. And the owners want a salary cap, and obviously the players don't. I mean, I 100% understand both sides of that. But this is just another chess piece that this might be the first work stoppage in the history of the world where more people actually might side with the owners and say this isn't right. It's not going to be usually it's billionaires fighting with millionaires, and it still is, but it's the billionaires might actually have a case here in the public opinion.
Yeah, baseball's been on the heat over the past few years. I think ratings and attendance are all up. You look at, people would say the Dodgers are ruining baseball. I guess the flip side is, though, the past couple of years, there was a lot of games they could have lost and not won the World Series. Now they did
it
up winning
away from losing last year.
Right. So it's not like they're just this impossible team to beat, even though they are stacked. I mean, you look at some small market teams. I'm looking at the standings right now. The Brewers are up there, Tampa Bay.
Brewers
the White
have the
Sox.
best record in baseball, I believe.
Yep, the White Sox are up there. Diamondbacks are doing okay. I know Phoenix is a big city, but that's usually not a market that's gets a lot of attention in the baseball world. So yeah, we'll be interested to see if there is a stoppage. I don't know. Baseball has always kind of been a little bit different than other leagues with the money. I know salary cap and all these different things. It's not my wheelhouse, but I know I saw a lot of people freaking out about the trade. And if the Dodgers do go win it again this year, I'm sure that'll be more fuel for the people that don't like what the Dodgers are doing in baseball currently.
And I understand the Dodgers have more money than everybody else, and I understand that. They get more money and they spend, but here's the number that other teams need to strive for. That if the numbers are not 100% right, I apologize, but it's something like this. The Dodgers spend 73% of their revenue on payroll. Now, again, it doesn't matter what that number is. The Twins don't spend 73% of their revenue on players. It's only like 42% or something like that. So the number is what it is, but the percentage is damning for other teams. Like the Dodgers are reinvesting their money in their players, and other owners are pocketing the money. That's the difference.
Yeah, there should be a minimum percentage like what you're talking about. And you could do it every year. A minimal percentage might be kind of tough, but you could do it over like a 3-year period where you have to reinvest 55 or 60 or 65%.
And
back
doesn't
into
the NFL have that? I mean, obviously they have a salary cap that's a hard cap, but they have a minimum too, don't they?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and reread it.
Spend money
over a 3-year period. You have to spend so much of your cap. I'd have to re-pull it up and read the details on it. But that's a way so teams can't just hoard money for 2 or 3 years and then go sign a bunch of free agents or just not spend any money at all and tank. But yeah, there should be a minimum there in baseball. Obviously, the Dodgers, their attendance. I've told you before. Anytime I go out to LA or Southern California for work, I mean, you see Dodger stuff everywhere. So they've got a big fan base and they make a lot of money, but a minimal percentage would definitely help some of these other teams get these owners to reinvest that money on the team.
Yeah, and that's where the NFL, the Shield, like you're going to spend this much money, you can spend this much, and it's where they equal revenue share, so they're all getting the same roughly amount of money. I understand a little bit, but baseball, it's all about your TV money, and then if your owner wants to spend like the Mets, and the other side of that, the Mets spend like the second most amount of money, and they can't win a game. So I mean it is what it is. But the Dodgers, and I think the guy that owns the Dodgers actually is from I think he's from Iowa. Mark Walter, or the head of the hedge fund that has them, and I believe they just bought the Lakers. They own a bunch of stuff. And he's got it figured out, and he gives his team the best chance to win. And I know, Magic's part of it. I mean, he's, probably pretty minimal owner, but he's a face, and he does, he likes to, and as he should. He's a, when he walks in, he's an imposing figure at 6'8". and everybody knows who he is. And it's, I mean, I'm not a Dodgers fan, but if they'd win it this year, it'd be interesting because I think it'd be maybe the first time ever, or in a really, really, really long time in modern baseball, the first three-peat. Never happened before.
There's going to be plenty of people rooting against them. I don't really care either way. I think they're fun to watch, Ohtani and a lot of their players. But yeah, I mean, looking at the playoffs right now, the Cubs would be in, the Yankees. I think the Red Sox,
Yep.
Atlanta. So there's some good markets. I mean, if the playoffs did start right now, it'd be a good playoff bracket, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's if you're Major League Baseball, you want Chicago, you want Boston, you want New York, and you want LA in. Other than that, Atlanta has historically has been good for the last 35 years. And then, with right now with the White Sox are in right now, and they've been awful for 10 years. But having both teams in Chicago would be really good for baseball too.
Yeah, that would definitely help with the ratings. So, yeah, well, we'll see what happens if the work stoppage comes into play or not. I've been paying a little attention to baseball, but we're getting closer now to where you have to start watching. Obviously, last year, you and I, we did a lot of playoff baseball talk.
Yeah.
I know the World Series we covered
Yeah.
right after the final game, I think. But the playoffs should be fun. They always are in baseball. Any sports where it's do or die, go home, playoffs, you can't really beat it.
And they just play different, and once you turn that calendar to September 1, which is coming up. It's still most of a month away, but September 1, and you're 3 games back, and you got 2 series against that team, and yeah, there's a lot more strategy becomes involved. And then here's what's crazy is there's going to be teams that are 1 game out, and you're going to look back to May 15th, and you were up 10-1 and blew it. And I mean, it's like, that game in April 20th didn't really matter at the time, but it does matter, and it's just crazy.
Yeah, those April, May, some of the June games you think don't matter. Well, they can come back to bite you in the butt once the season ends, especially if you miss by a game or half a game or something like that. There's going to be 1 or 2 that the hardcore fans are going to look back on and say, damn, we really blew that one.
But on the flip side, because you play so many games, there's probably the same number of games that you shouldn't have won that you did. I mean, the old baseball saying is with 162 games, you're going to win 50, you're going to lose 50, just no matter what. And then it's the 62 games that matter.
No, that's a good saying. Yeah, of course you get some of the Homer fans. They're not gonna remember any of the games that they shouldn't have won that they did, though. No.
Yeah. So, all right, Trev. Anything else you want to talk about? We're about 45 minutes in.
Nope, that's about perfect. I got to go meet some coworkers here in a little bit and head to the show. So about 45 minutes. That's a good one here. And over the next few weeks, we're going to really ramp up on the football. We'll get some odds out there, bets, make our predictions, and it's not far away.
Nope, awesome. All right, thanks, Trev. Enjoy Vegas. Stay cool when you step outside.
Try not to melt. Hey, have a good one.